I apologize for the lack of updates of the past couple of weeks, but I had a few computer issues and I was also trying to finish a video that I recently uploaded to my second channel. The video is in the description and I hope you can check it out, and if you liked it, please leave a comment and also subscribe to my second channel. Today I want to continue to talk about José Sócrates. In the first video I already covered the time when José Sócrates started to appear in the Portuguese political life. Today, I want to talk about the policies that José Sócrates brought with him and his government when he won the elections in 2005. In those elections, the socialists got, for the very first time, their absolute majority in parliament. So let's start by saying that many people were quite anxious to see how José Sócrates would actually govern this country, because many of the ideas or policies that he wanted to push for seemed to be quite interesting. Others, not so much. But the reality was that the majority of those policies seemed to be in line with reforms. Reforms that usually the socialists were always not keen to do. They never wanted to do any sort of reforms because, as I explained many times, the socialists live off their clienteles. The far left live off their clienteles. So when they are in power, they only govern, and I'm saying this with air quotes, they only govern the country to please their clienteles. And, to be fair, José Sócrates did exactly the same. However, the policies that he was trying to push forward when he got into government seemed to be a little bit different. So many people started to think that this could be a turning point for Portugal. I mean, nearly 4 decades passed since Portugal became a democracy, and we only saw poverty and misery. So perhaps this was the turning point. Perhaps this new socialist with all these ideas could be the responsible for something good in Portugal. What were these policies? Obviously, some of them were not as good. One of them was related with social security, because social security in Portugal is unsustainable. It is never going to be sustainable, in fact. And this was a system created by the socialists, and so of course it doesn't work, because the socialists don't know how to do anything. And because it was unsustainable already in 2005, José Sócrates and his government introduced a sustainability factor. Essentially, what the sustainability factor does is to shift the legal age for retirement without penalty. In Portugal, when you want to retire, you have a legal age to retire, otherwise you will get a penalty in your pension. You may have discounted all the necessary income for your pension, but you will still have cuts if you do not retire at the legal age of retirement. And what this sustainability factor does is move the legal age of retirement forward. It keeps increasing. Right now, the legal age of retirement is 66 years and a few months, and it keeps increasing. And given the fact that the social security will never be sustainable in this country, and one day I'm going to do a video about the social security in Portugal and explain why it's never going to be sustainable, and the sustainability factor will just mean that more people, especially the young people of today, will have to work for far longer than everyone else in the past and earn less because, as I explained in previous videos, the socialist policies always result in more poverty and lower wages. And Portugal is one of the countries in Europe with the lowest wages. And so, with the sustainability factor, it is guaranteed that in 20 to 30 years, people will have to work up to 75 years of age in order to not have a penalty in their retirement pension. So, apart from this specific policy about social security that obviously made no one happy, there were quite a few things that seemed quite good, and I'm going to talk about some of them. And first, some context. In Portugal, a very socialist/communist country, the state is everything. Everything is for the state, and the individual has almost no rights. And the state wants to control you, the state wants to do whatever it wants, even if that means going over all sorts of people. It doesn't matter what the people want, what matters is the state. That's the pattern that you will find in pretty much all the countries where socialism or communism are reigning, essentially. And with this kind of control, there's lots of bureaucracy. And so Portugal, even though it's such a tiny country and such a poor and miserable country, it has a ton of bureaucracy, even for the simplest things. And of course, when we're talking about economic growth, you will have to talk about creating new companies. And the bureaucracy to create a new company in Portugal is absolutely insane. However, the program, the policies, or one of them, that José Sócrates wanted to push for was related with a decrease of bureaucracy, and specifically for the creation of companies. And this seemed quite good. The program was called Simplex, and it was going to try to reduce bureaucracy, to facilitate the creation of new companies, for example. This seemed great. There was also another program which aimed to manage, or at least to make better use of the state resources, because Portugal is extremely inefficient in how it uses the state resources because of the things, as I explained before, of socialists and the far left that essentially govern, in air quotes, for their clienteles, and their clienteles are the public servants. Nothing is being done for the people that actually pay taxes and need the services from the state. Nothing is being done for the people. It's only being done for the clientele of whoever is in government. And typically it's the left and the far left, and they will get votes for the benefits that they give to the public servants, which are, again, the first-rate citizens in Portugal. But this policy of José Sócrates seemed to say that they wanted to actually put the state resources to better use. Now, of course, these are only words, but in Portugal, these words were never uttered in actual policies. They may say that during the campaigns, but when we are talking about an actual government program, those words completely disappear. But in this case, with José Sócrates, they were there, and so everyone was pleasantly surprised, and I was one of them. Besides these programs, there were quite a few reforms as well in many of the systems run by the state, specifically education. One of the reforms for the education system was related with a program that aimed to increase the level of education of Portuguese people. A program was created with the name Novas Oportunidades, or New Opportunities, that essentially had the goal to increase the level of education of everyone that actually signed for this program. Another reform in the education system was related with infrastructure. The Portuguese public schools were old, they had many issues, and with this new reform, the idea was to actually have public investment to improve the infrastructure of public schools. And for that, a new public company was created. It was called Parque Escolar, and it was going to manage all sorts of contracts that the state was going to make with private companies in order to improve the infrastructure of public schools. There was also a reform in the transportation system, and they wanted to modernize essentially the transportation system in Portugal, and one of those ideas was related with the Train de Grande Vitesse, TGV, and along with the TGV, public investment was also required in the infrastructure because the train tracks in Portugal are quite old and they needed to be improved to sustain these high-speed trains. Another big reform pushed by José Sócrates in his government plan was related with technology. Essentially, he wanted to push for public investment in technology in order to modernize the Portuguese economy. And one of those was related also with the education system. Basically, the state was going to make a contract with a private company, and they would build a computer, a netbook, a low-cost netbook, that would then be distributed to low-income students that would use the computer in school during classes. This computer was eventually called Magalhães. So, when you look at all this all seems great, doesn't it? All of these things actually do seem good. When you see them on paper, and it's actually a government plan, everything seems fine. Everyone was glad to hear these measures, these policies, and José Sócrates actually seemed intent in applying them. And he did. He did apply these policies. But what I'm going to explain in the next video is that all these policies were a scam. They were actually implemented, but they were a scam at great cost to the taxpayer of Portugal. And I'm going to explain why in the next video. So, I hope you like this, and I'll see you next time.